Alpha King pulled Maiden from frozen lake. Who she really was shocked everyone. Snow fell like soft white feathers over the kingdom of Eldrath. Mountains rose jagged and cold against the gray sky, and the wind whispered secrets through the bare trees. In the heart of the frozen wilderness lay the Mirror Lake, a place the villagers avoided. It was said that those who dared to enter its icy waters never returned. Some whispered it was cursed. Others said it held the spirits of the lost, frozen forever in silent torment. King Kael'var, known as the Alpha King for his strength and command, rode along the edge of the lake. His black cloak fluttered in the cold wind, and the silver fur lining framed his sharp face. Though his eyes were stern, filled with the weight of ruling, there was a softness reserved only for the rare moments of solitude. Today, solitude had led him to the frozen lake, driven by a restless feeling he could not name. Kael'var's horse whinnied and shivered, pawing at the ice-crusted ground. Ahead, something unusual caught his eye. A shimmer beneath the ice, a shape that seemed almost alive. He dismounted quickly, boots crunching in the snow. The closer he stepped, the clearer it became. A figure, a girl, trapped beneath the thick ice, her hands pressed against the frozen surface as if trying to push herself free. The Alpha King's heart quickened. Most would have turned away fearing the curse, but something in him would not let her die. With careful, strong movements, he broke the ice around her. Water splashed cold against his hands and boots, but he did not flinch. He pulled her free, gasping and wet, lifting her into his arms. Her skin was pale, almost like porcelain, yet she seemed untouched by the biting cold. Kael'var laid her on the snow, brushing snow from her hair. "Wake up," he said, his voice low but firm. "You are safe now." Her eyes opened slowly, wide and clear, reflecting the pale winter sky. She was beautiful, but not in a simple way. There was something mysterious about her, as if she belonged to a world beyond the mountains, beyond the snow, beyond time itself. "Where?" she whispered, her voice trembling. Her lips were blue, and her body shivered, but her eyes held a strange strength, an intelligence that made Kael'var pause. "You were trapped in the lake," Kael'var explained. "You're safe now." She blinked, looking at him with a mixture of confusion and something he could not name. Trust, perhaps, or curiosity. I remember nothing," she said. Her voice was like a soft wind over ice. Kael'var nodded. He lifted her again, careful, and led her towards the nearest village. The snow crunched underfoot, and silence fell over the forest, except for the occasional cry of a distant bird. The villagers gasped when they saw the Alpha King carrying the girl. Whispers followed them like shadows. Who is she? Where did she come from? She was trapped in Mirror Lake. Kael'var did not answer. He felt a protective heat in his chest, unfamiliar and unwelcome. He had faced enemies and betrayal, yet something about this girl made him feel defenseless. Not weak exactly, but unsettled. At the village, the healer took her from his arms, wrapping her in thick blankets. Kael'var stayed nearby, watching as the girl slowly regained warmth. She shivered, but her eyes never left him. "Who are you?" Kael'var asked finally, unable to contain his curiosity. She shook her head. "I don't know. I don't remember." Her words struck something deep in him. Most people feared the cold, feared the snow, feared the harsh winter that ruled Eldrath. But this girl, she seemed almost a part of it, as if the frost itself had made her. And yet, she was fragile. She needed care, guidance, protection. Kael'var's mind raced. Could he trust her? Could he even explain why he wanted to? He was the king. He was supposed to command, not feel. But as he watched her, something whispered that she was more than she appeared. Something powerful, something dangerous, something important. The healer approached him. "Blood. She will live," the woman said, "but she is strange. Not just because of the ice. There is a strength in her. A presence. Be careful, Your Majesty." Kael'var frowned. He had not expected a warning. not about a girl. Strange how. She is not like others, the healer said. The frost has not harmed her, not at all. She may be touched by magic, or something older. Magic. Kael'var's heart tightened. Eldrath had always been wary of magic, especially after the wars of old, when sorcery had brought ruin. Yet he could not look away from her. He wanted to know, to understand, to protect, and perhaps something else he did not yet name. Days passed. The girl, whose name was revealed only as Alicia, began to recover. She spoke little, but her gaze followed Kael'var everywhere, curious, searching, sometimes fearful. There was a silence between them that carried weight, a quiet tension that made the court whisper. The servants watched with wide eyes, the courtiers muttered in corners, and yet Kael'var did not care. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the jagged mountains, Kael'var found her standing by the castle window, staring out at the frozen lake. "You are staring at danger," he said softly. "You should not go near the lake again." Alicia did not turn. "I feel something there," she said. Her voice was almost a whisper, but it carried across the room. "It calls to me. I don't know why." Kael'var stepped closer. "It is not safe. The lake is cursed. You could vanish again." She looked at him then, and for the first time he saw a flicker of fear. Fear not of the lake, but of him. Yet her eyes held defiance, curiosity, longing. He realized with a start that she was not just fragile. She was strong in ways he could not yet measure. "Why do you care so much?" she asked quietly. Kael'var hesitated. He had no clear answer. "Because I cannot let you face it alone," he said finally, truth heavy in his words. "And because I do not know what I would do if you disappeared again." The words hung in the air. Neither moved for a long moment. Snow fell softly against the glass, reflecting the pale light on her face. She looked away first, eyes dropping to the frozen landscape below. That night Kael'var could not sleep. He walked the battlements, the wind biting at his face, the moon casting a silver glow over the kingdom. And he thought of her eyes, her voice, her strange quiet power. Something about her felt impossible and yet real. Something that had not touched his life in decades. Hope. Days turned into a week, and Alicia slowly began to speak more. But each word carried secrets she did not yet understand herself. She remembered fragments, a face in the snow, a voice calling her name, visions of places she had never seen yet somehow knew. Kael'var noticed these flashes of memory in her eyes and felt a mixture of awe and fear. The court grew restless. Rumors swirled like winter storms. Who was this girl? Why had she survived Mirror Lake? And why did the Alpha King, known for his unshakable command, appear so unsettled by her presence? One evening, a messenger arrived from a distant kingdom, riding through the snow with urgent news. Kael'var listened silently, face unreadable. When the messenger left, Kael'var turned to Alicia, who had been standing nearby, silent and watching. "Did you hear that?" he asked. "I did," she said softly. I feel something changing." Kael'var frowned. "Yeah. Something is shifting, and I fear it may be connected to you." Her gaze met his, wide and frightened, yet filled with something more, a spark of knowledge, a hidden truth. And then, for the first time, she whispered words that made Kael'var's heart stop. "Kael'var, my name is not Alicia. You must call me by the name I was given." He froze. The court had called her Alicia. The healer had called her Alicia. And yet she claimed another name, one that stirred memories he did not understand, of legends and whispers long forgotten. "Who?" Kael'var began, but she shook her head. "Not now. Soon," she said, her voice trembling yet steady. "But when the time comes, everyone will know who I truly am." Kael'var's mind raced. Secrets, magic, prophecy, everything he had believed about the world and his kingdom was suddenly uncertain. And yet beneath the fear, beneath the questions, a deep, unfamiliar feeling took root. Longing. For the first time in his life, the Alpha King felt powerless, and it frightened him more than any battle ever had. And in that moment, as snow continued to fall softly over the kingdom of Eldrath, the frozen lake waited silently in the distance, holding secrets that would change everything. The castle of Eldrath was quiet that evening, its tall towers shrouded in the soft glow of lanterns. Snow covered every roof, and the wind sighed through the empty courtyards, as if carrying whispers from the mountains. Inside, Kael'var walked the halls with steady, careful steps. His thoughts, however, were far from steady. Since the rescue of Alicia, or rather, the girl who refused the name Alicia, he had not felt such unease. She stayed in the guest chambers near the high tower, where the wind howled through the stone walls. But she was no ordinary guest. Kael'var could sense her presence even from across the hall, the faint warmth in the cold castle, the subtle energy that seemed to hum around her. That morning he had visited her, expecting quiet and sleep. Instead, he found her standing by the window, staring at the frozen lake, as if waiting for it to speak to her. Her hair, wet from the rescue days ago, had dried and taken on a strange shimmer, almost like frost crystals catching the light. "You are staring at the lake again," Kael'var said, his voice low. "It is not safe."
"I told you to stay away." Alicia did not turn immediately. She remained silent for a moment, as if listening to something only she could hear.
Then she spoke, her voice trembling slightly. "It calls me. Kael'var. I don't know why, but I feel it in my chest, like a rhythm I have always known." Kael'var frowned. He had always ruled by strength, by control, by certainty. Nothing about this girl followed the rules of the world he knew.
"It is dangerous."
You could vanish again, or worse, awaken forces you do not understand. Alicia finally turned, her pale blue eyes meeting his. "I am not afraid of them," she said softly. There was a confidence in her tone that surprised him, one he had not expected from someone he had saved from near death. "But I want to understand who I am and why I am here." Kael'var studied her for a long moment. He wanted to tell her that some truths were better left unknown, that some powers, some legacies, could destroy a life before it even began. Yet he did not. Perhaps it was the weight of her gaze, the honesty in her voice, or the strange connection that seemed to bind their fates. Perhaps it was that he could no longer command his own heart when she was near. Days passed. Kael'var ensured she was cared for, even personally checking the meals that came to her room and arranging for the healer to continue her recovery. The girl seemed to grow stronger each day. She walked the halls with a light step, observed the gardens from the windows, and sometimes, in quiet moments, she seemed to look through the stone walls, into the forest beyond, as if the wind itself had secrets to share. One evening, Kael'var found her in the old library, a vast chamber filled with towering shelves and ancient tomes. The firelight flickered across her face as she traced her fingers along the spines of the books.
"Do you read?"
Kael'var asked, his voice softer than usual. "I do not remember reading," she admitted. "But I feel knowledge here, like something that belongs to me, something I once knew." Kael'var approached and watched her carefully. "Some knowledge is dangerous," he warned. "Some things are best left in the past."
Elysia looked up at him, a small, almost mischievous smile on her lips.
"I have been in the past already," she said quietly, almost to herself. "I have seen it, felt it, in dreams, and in the lake." "There is a story here, Kael'var. A story that does not end with my drowning." Kael'var felt a chill run through him, not from the fire but from the weight of her words. She was no ordinary girl, and he knew it. There was a power in her that both frightened and fascinated him. That night the castle was unusually still. Kael'var had retired to his chambers but could not sleep. He walked the battlements, the wind biting his face, and looked toward the frozen lake. The ice gleamed silver under the moonlight, untouched yet alive with mystery. He could almost feel her presence calling him, as if the lake itself whispered her name. Suddenly, a soft sound drifted across the castle grounds. A voice, a song, or perhaps a word that he could not understand. Kael'var's heart skipped. It was her. Alicia. He did not hesitate. He wrapped his cloak tightly around his shoulders and descended into the courtyard. The snow crunched beneath his boots as he moved towards the sound. There she was, standing at the edge of the lake, the moonlight casting her reflection across the ice. Her arms were raised slightly, her eyes closed, and a faint glow seemed to surround her. Kael'var froze, unsure whether he should call out or remain hidden. "Alicia!" he finally called, his voice echoing over the frozen water. She turned, her eyes wide, startled by his presence. "You came," she whispered, relief washing over her face. I felt it. I needed to see it again." Kael'var stepped closer, but carefully, aware of the strange energy that radiated from her. "It is not safe." "The lake?" "I know," she interrupted, her voice firm. "But I need to understand. I need to know why I am here, why I survived. Something is calling me, Kael'var. Something from before." He studied her, his mind racing. He had faced enemies in battle, storms in the mountains, betrayal in his court, but none of it had ever shaken him like this. He wanted to pull her away, to protect her, but he also understood that some journeys could not be forced. Some truths must be faced. "Then I will stay," he said finally, his voice quiet, almost vulnerable. "But you will not be alone. If the lake has secrets, we will face them together." Her eyes softened, and for the first time Kael'var saw her smile, not just a flicker of expression, but a full, real smile. And in that moment, the air between them seemed to shift, a bond forming that was deeper than mere gratitude or fascination. The following days were filled with learning and observation. Alicia spent hours in the library, studying the old tomes and manuscripts that Kael'var allowed her access to. She discovered maps of the mountains, old legends of winter realms, and tales of a forgotten magic that once ruled the north. Each discovery seemed to awaken something within her, small sparks of memory, fleeting images of faces and places that she could not yet name. Kael'var watched silently. Each time she uncovered a new fragment of knowledge, she felt a mix of pride and fear. Pride for her resilience, fear for the danger that her growing power might attract. Yet he could not deny the fascination that drew him closer to her, the pull he had not felt for any living being in decades. One evening, as they walked together along the castle terrace, snow drifting around them like soft rain, Alicia spoke quietly. "Kael'var, I feel like I am part of something larger, something older than this kingdom. I don't know what it is yet, but I know it is important." Kael'var stopped and looked at her, the snow settling on his shoulders. "You are important," he said simply, "to me, and perhaps to this kingdom as well." She looked down, brushing snow from her hands, then met his gaze again. "Do you trust me?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Kael'var hesitated. Trust was not given lightly in his world. He had been betrayed, manipulated, and tested countless times. Yet, looking at her, he felt an instinct he could not ignore. "Yes," he said finally. "I trust you, but you must trust yourself as well." She nodded, her expression serious. "I will try." But even as she said the words, something stirred beneath the ice of the lake, a power that had been waiting, patient and silent. That night, Kael'var dreamed of the lake, of a shadowed figure rising from the frozen depths, eyes glowing like cold fire. He woke with a start, heart pounding, and found the room empty beside him. He rushed to the balcony, and there she was, standing in the moonlight, staring at the lake once more. "Kael'var," she whispered, turning to him with a mixture of fear and awe. "It is awakening." He had known the lake was dangerous, but now he understood the depth of it. Something ancient was stirring, something tied to her very being. Yet even with fear pressing in, he felt a fierce determination. He would protect her, even if it meant facing the unknown alone. "Whatever comes," he said, stepping closer, "we face it together." Alicia nodded, and in that silent agreement a bond was sealed, a promise not of words but of trust, understanding, and a shared destiny that neither fully understood yet, and somewhere beneath the ice, something moved. The morning air in Eldrath was sharp and cold, carrying with it the scent of snow and pine. The castle stood like a sentinel over the frozen lands, its towers dusted with frost, its banners fluttering stiffly in the wind. Inside, King Caelvar paced the corridors, restless. The events of the previous week weighed heavily on him. Alicia had grown stronger, more confident with each passing day. She walked through the halls with a quiet grace, studying old books and maps, and occasionally staring into the distance, as if listening to whispers that only she could hear. Caelvar observed her closely, unable to shake the feeling that something ancient and powerful stirred within her, a force tied not just to the lake, but to the history of Eldrath itself. It was the healer who first noticed it. She came to Caelvar early one morning, her expression grave.
"Your Majesty," she said quietly, "I have examined the girl."
"There is more than health here, something magical, something tied to the old winter realms."
"The old winter realms? The lands beyond the mountains," the healer explained.
"Lands long thought lost to time, ruled by a line of queens and kings, with powers over frost and shadow. The girl, she carries their mark. Her survival in Mirror Lake is no accident. She is their last heir." Caelvar's heart tightened. He had suspected something unusual, but this revelation unsettled him. If the girl he had rescued was truly the heir of a lost kingdom, the balance of power in Eldrath could shift, and yet the thought of her in danger ignited a protective fire he could not quell. When he told Alicia, she did not react with surprise. Instead, her eyes filled with a strange mix of recognition and fear. I remember flashes," she whispered. "Faces, castles, voices calling me something I cannot yet say. I knew this once." Caelvar stepped closer, his hand hovering near hers. "Then you must tell me what you remember. Every detail, no matter how small." Alicia shook her head, her lips trembling. "Not yet. It is dangerous. Some memories are locked for a reason. If I remember too soon, I may lose myself." Caelvar felt a sharp pang of unease. He understood the need for caution, but he could not deny the growing bond between them. A bond forged in the frozen waters of Mirror Lake and strengthened by days of quiet observation, mutual respect, and a shared sense of destiny. The next days were filled with tension. Reports arrived from distant villages. Livestock found frozen in place, strange lights in the sky, shadows moving unnaturally in the forests. The people whispered of a curse, and fear began to spread. Caelvar knew that if these signs continued, the court would demand action, and the kingdom could descend into panic. Alicia, however, remained calm. She spent hours near the windows overlooking the frozen lands, sometimes speaking softly to herself, sometimes drawing symbols in the frost. Caelvar watched her from the doorway, his mind torn between awe and concern. There was something powerful in her, something he could feel, even without understanding it fully. One evening, the tension reached a breaking point. A violent storm rose over the mountains, lightning flashing across the sky and thunder echoing through the valleys. Caelvar found Alicia standing at the edge of the terrace, her arms raised as if welcoming the storm. The snow swirled around her, and her hair seemed to shimmer with an otherworldly light. "Alicia!" Caelvar shouted, rushing toward her. "Step back." The storm. She turned to him, eyes blazing, voice firm.
"I feel it, Caelvar. I can control it, if only for a moment."
"The storm, it listens to me." Caelvar's chest tightened. He had always ruled through strength and strategy, but this was beyond anything he had known. Yet in that moment, he saw not just power, but vulnerability. "You must be careful," he warned. This is not a game. You cannot risk losing control. Alicia lowered her hands, and the wind began to die down, snow settling softly around her feet. She looked at him, her expression torn between relief and longing. I will try, she said. But I cannot ignore what is part of me. Kael'var, I need to understand who I am and why I survived. Kael'var reached for her hand, hesitating before letting his fingers brush hers. Then we will face it together, he said, no matter what comes. That night sleep eluded Kael'var. He stood once again on the battlements, staring at the frozen lake. Somewhere beneath its ice he sensed a stirring, a power waiting for the right moment to awaken. He thought of Alicia, her strange abilities, her mysterious past, and the words she had spoken, that she carried the mark of a lost kingdom. The next morning brought a revelation. Alicia woke from a dream, pale and trembling. Kael'var, the lake, she whispered. It is not just a place. It is a prison and a protector. It held me until I was ready. Kael'var knelt beside her, concern etched on his face. Ready for what? To remember, she said. To face the curse that comes with my bloodline. The Winter Realm. Its legacy is tied to the lake, to me. If I do not act carefully, I could bring ruin to this kingdom, or worse, to myself. Kael'var felt the weight of her words. He had seen courage in many forms, but this was different. This was a young woman, barely recovered from near death, speaking of destiny, power, and danger, with a clarity that left him both awed and fearful. As days passed, Alicia began to explore her abilities more consciously. She discovered that she could sense the movements of the storm, the frost creeping along the mountains, even the quiet whispers of the castle itself. She could glimpse shadows of the past, faint visions of people and events long forgotten. Each discovery brought her closer to understanding her heritage, but it also drew the attention of forces beyond the castle walls. One evening a messenger arrived riding through the snow with urgent news. Your Majesty, the rider said, bowing low, a shadow has been seen in the northern forests, moving against the wind. Villagers report voices in the snow, calling a name long forgotten. Kael'var's eyes narrowed. And the girl? The messenger hesitated. We do not know, my lord, but the signs, they resemble the legends of the Winter Realms. Some fear the curse is awakening. Kael'var's jaw tightened. He understood then that Alicia's past was not just a matter of memory or identity. It was a threat and a responsibility. Yet even as fear pressed on him, he felt a determination that surprised him. He would protect her, guide her, and face whatever destiny awaited, even if it meant confronting forces he did not fully understand. That night, Kael'var found Alicia once more on the terrace, gazing at the northern forests where the shadows had been seen. Kael'var. I feel them, she whispered. The curse. It is near. It is testing me, calling me. I must face it soon, or it may consume me. Kael'var stepped closer, taking her hands in his. You are not alone. Whatever comes, we face it together. You have me, and the kingdom. And I will not let anything harm you. Alicia's eyes softened, and for the first time she allowed herself to feel the depth of the bond between them. It was more than gratitude, more than fascination. It was a connection forged through survival, trust, and shared destiny. The following days were a delicate balance of training, preparation, and discovery. Alicia learned to channel her abilities with caution, sensing the forces around her without letting them overwhelm her. Kael'var guided her with patience, offering advice and protection, but also allowing her the space to grow. In their shared efforts, a quiet intimacy blossomed, a respect and understanding that neither could fully explain. Yet the threat loomed. The shadows in the north grew stronger, the winds carried strange whispers, and the frozen lake pulsed with a power that could no longer be contained. One evening, as a pale moon rose over the mountains, Alicia approached Kael'var, her face pale but resolute. Kael'var, she said softly, I must go to the lake. I must face what lies beneath the ice. It is time for me to understand the full truth of my heritage and the curse tied to my bloodline. He had feared this moment, yet he knew he could not stop her. Then I go with you, he said, his voice firm. Whatever awaits us, we face it together. And so, as snow fell gently around the castle, the Alpha King and the girl from the frozen lake prepared to confront the power and legacy that would test them both. The curse and the crown, the heritage of a lost kingdom, and the bond that had grown between them in the shadow of the ice. Beneath the frozen lake something stirred, watching, waiting, and preparing to reveal secrets that could change everything. The first light of dawn crept across the frozen kingdom of Eldrath, painting the snow in soft gold. The castle stood silent, heavy with the weight of the previous night's storms. Within the halls, Calvar's heart beat with an unusual restlessness. Today, he and Alicia would confront the truth, the curse that had waited in the depths of Mirror Lake, and the legacy that had bound her since birth. Alicia stood at the castle terrace, her cloak wrapped tightly against the cold, her breath forming tiny clouds in the crisp morning air. Her eyes, pale and luminous, were fixed on the frozen lake. Calvar approached silently, placing a firm hand on her shoulder. "Are you ready?" he asked softly. She nodded, though her grip on the railing tightened. "I must do this, Calvar. I cannot run from what I am, from what I was meant to be." Calvar studied her, seeing both the fragility that remained and the immense strength that had emerged in the last weeks. He remembered her gasping beneath the ice, the first time he had held her in his arms. And now she was facing the very power that had almost ended her life. "I will not leave your side," he said. "Whatever lies beneath the lake, we face it together." Together they descended from the castle and walked through the snow to the edge of Mirror Lake. The ice stretched out before them, flawless and silent, yet beneath its surface, Calvar could sense movement, something ancient awakening. Alicia stepped closer, her bare hand brushing against the frozen surface. A faint glow spread beneath the ice, following her touch like water responding to a stone dropped gently into it. "The lake," she whispered. "It recognizes me. It knows I am its heir."
Calvar tightened his grip on her hand. "Then let it guide you, but be careful."
"Do not lose yourself." Alicia closed her eyes, taking a deep breath. Slowly, deliberately, she pressed both hands to the ice, and the glow beneath it pulsed brighter, spreading outward in shimmering veins. The snow around them swirled, lifted by a gentle, unseen wind, forming a circle of sparkling frost. Calvar watched in awe. He had seen storms, magic, and legend, but nothing like this. The air was alive with a strange energy, a rhythm that seemed to echo in his chest, matching the pulse of her own heartbeat. Suddenly the ice cracked softly, not violently, but with a sound like a breath escaping after centuries. A figure rose from beneath the lake, a shape cloaked in frost and light, shifting and ethereal, as if it were both human and spirit. Calvar's hand went instinctively to Alicia's shoulder. "Do not be afraid," Alicia whispered, her voice steady. "This is my heritage, my past. I am not alone in this." The figure before them spoke, its voice like wind across snow. "Child of the lost winter realm, you have awakened. The curse that bound your line is here, but so is your power. Choose, wield it to protect or succumb to it and vanish." Alicia stepped forward, her gaze unwavering. "I choose to protect," she said. Her words carried the weight of generations, of promises made long before her birth. "I will not let fear guide me. I will not let the past destroy the future." The spirit shimmered, nodding, and the ice beneath them began to glow in brighter, warmer tones. Calvar watched as the energy wrapped around Alicia, not harming her but merging with her essence, as if she and the lake were becoming one. Frost danced across her hair, her skin, her eyes, but instead of cold, it felt alive. Alive with history, magic, and a promise of renewal. "Calvar," Alicia said, turning to him, "I am ready." Whatever comes next, we face it together.
Kael'var's chest tightened.
He reached for her hand, holding it firmly.
Always, he replied.
The spirit lifted slightly from the ice, its form stabilizing, becoming more solid, more real. The curse, it said, is broken, but not forgotten. Its echoes remain to remind the world of balance. You are its keeper, its guardian, and its redeemer. Elysia closed her eyes and nodded. She felt the pulse of the lake, the wisdom of generations, and the depth of her own courage. She had survived drowning, manipulation, and fear. Now she was whole, ready to embrace her destiny. Kael'var stepped closer, placing a protective arm around her shoulders. "You did it," he whispered. "You faced what none could face and came back stronger." Elysia looked at him, eyes bright with unshed tears. "I could not have done it without you," she said softly. "You held me when I was weak. You believed in me when I could not believe in myself." For a long moment they stood together, two figures on the edge of the frozen lake, the morning sun glinting on frost and ice, a kingdom waiting quietly behind them. They did not speak. They did not need to. The bond between them, forged in danger, trust and shared destiny, was unspoken but absolute. Slowly, the glow from the lake faded, leaving only soft frost shimmering in the morning light. The storm had passed, the curse had been faced, and a new chapter began, not just for Elysia, not just for Kael'var, but for the kingdom itself. When they returned to the castle, the court was waiting, anxious and silent. Whispers filled the halls. Had the curse truly been broken? What had happened at Mirror Lake? Who was this girl? And why had the Alpha King seemed so changed? Kael'var and Elysia entered the throne room together, side by side. She walked with grace, her posture confident, her presence commanding yet gentle. The court fell silent, sensing the power and resolve emanating from her. "People of Eldrath," Kael'var began, his voice steady, "you have watched this kingdom face fear and uncertainty. You have seen the unknown and whispered of curses, but today we have faced what was hidden, and we have overcome it." Elysia stepped forward, her eyes meeting those of the courtiers, her voice clear and calm.
"I am Elysia," she said.
"I am the last heir of the Winter Realm, and I come not to rule over you, but to protect this kingdom alongside King Kael'var. Together we will ensure peace, balance, and strength for the kingdom and for each of you." Murmurs spread through the hall, some of awe, some of uncertainty, yet the fear that had gripped the court began to ease. The power in her words, the calm certainty in her presence, and the visible bond with Kael'var reassured even the most skeptical. Kael'var reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Together," he repeated. The simple word carried more weight than any crown, any decree, or any sword. The following days were a time of renewal. The snow that had seemed endless began to soften in places. Rivers thawed slightly, and the people felt hope once more. Elysia worked alongside Kael'var, learning the ways of the kingdom, but also teaching the court the lessons of patience, trust, and understanding power that did not destroy. In quiet moments, Kael'var and Elysia would walk the castle gardens, where the snow still lingered, and speak of dreams, of futures, of what they had endured. They did not need grand gestures. The simplest touch, the shared glance, carried the weight of all they had faced. One evening, as the sun set, casting a golden light over the frost, Kael'var turned to Elysia. "Do you feel it?" he asked. "The world changing, but not because we command it, only because we survived it together?" Elysia smiled softly. "Yes," she said. "And I feel it in you as well. Strength tempered by care, a heart open to more than just power." Kael'var looked at her, his eyes filled with quiet emotion. "I have always ruled with strength," he said. "But now I understand something I never knew. Courage is not just facing enemies. It is trusting, protecting, and loving someone enough to be changed by them." Elysia took his hand, her fingers warm against his. "And I have learned that strength can come from trust, from hope,
from standing together even when the world seems frozen around us. They stood together in silence, watching the last rays of sunlight glint on the snow, a kingdom reborn around them, a destiny fulfilled, and a bond unbreakable.
And somewhere in the distant mountains the frozen lake rested once more, silent and still. But the pulse of its magic lingered, a quiet reminder of the past, a protector of the future, and a testament to the courage of those who dared to face what lay beneath the ice. The Alpha King and the Maiden of the Frozen Lake. Together they had faced prophecy, curse, and fear. Together they had found redemption, love, and destiny. The kingdom of Eldrath was no longer ruled by fear. It was guided by trust, courage, and the quiet strength of hearts united against the cold. And in that union, there was power far greater than any crown or decree, a power that would endure for generations.